Hello and welcome. In this video we'll discuss how the F-35 established itself, how skyrocketing costs are making the plane unaffordable for more countries today. But I especially want to talk about the feedback from all the countries that have had the opportunity to operate the plane for more than a decade now, for some of them. And how? Could the countries that made the mistake of going through with the purchase today avoid getting into this impending disaster? What is the F-35, which will strain their budget for many decades? Alright, let's get back to our video. We're going back to the F-35 and first, the way it gradually became established in all these countries. The first, obviously, is Great Britain, which is the only Tier 1 partner. They needed to develop a short takeoff and vertical landing aircraft to replace the British-made Harrier. Western countries needed aircraft that could take off from carriers without catapults. The British had no other option. They introduced a technology that was vital for their aviation and for customers worldwide. That's why they have a monopoly and no choice exists. Countries with new generation aircraft carriers in this category had to buy the F-35. In 2007, the Netherlands conducted an evaluation using 700 criteria. And hold on, it's the Rafale in the F4 standard that wins the competition against the F-35. But what's going to happen? The Dutch government will impose its choice of the F-35 to purchase the aircraft afterwards. And that? Leaked Dutch documents confirmed the Rafale's superiority over the F-35. Based on Dutch evaluation criteria, these are the elements shown on the screen. In 2008, there were several purchases. First, there's Norway, and here we find out that, in reality, the Norwegians wanted to buy the Gripen. Due to heavy United States diplomatic pressure, they eventually gave in and bought the F-35, even though they didn't want to. And we know this thanks to WikiLeaks, where the American diplomatic exchanges clearly show just how much. They were able to put pressure to change Norway's decision, even though they weren't supposed to buy that plane. Next, we have Australia, where the purchase is purely political. This was confirmed by two former chiefs of staff of the Air Force who stated that the plane was not suited to their country's needs. So, it's hard to see how it could have won the competitions. When you have the chiefs of staff of the Air Force saying that the plane doesn't meet their needs, Australians are used to being ripped off and pressured by Americans, as with the submarine story. Next is Italy. They have no choice since they need a plane that can take off from an aircraft carrier. In 2010, Israel was very submissive to the United States. Ultimately, they have no choice, like Japan and South Korea, except Israel. They still manage to develop their own system, meaning they integrate part of the avionics. They have mission planning software that doesn't return to the United States. It's the only country that is truly sovereign in the use of the F-35 for Japan. They need it since they also have a naval version, giving the F-35 another monopoly. For South Korea, there's a lot of submission. Also see my video about the Rafale, which won South Korea's competition in 2003. The Americans pressured South Korea to buy their F-35. So, once again, South Korea didn't buy the plane they had chosen, the one they thought was suited to their local needs. In 2016, we have Denmark. This will likely cause major controversy as the government is accused of overestimating the F-35's performance. Reduced estimated operating costs, but that's based on 2016 figures, which have risen even more since then. As a result, Parliament managed to obtain the publication of the evaluation report, but in the end, the evaluation report was classified. With so many elements that were blacked out, there was no way to really know whether they had tampered with the evaluation or not. But there is little doubt, at least in military circles, especially considering that today, from a diplomatic point of view, they bought a plane from a country that is militarily threatening part of their territory. Obviously, with Greenland, all these assets, it doesn't make everyone happy. In 2018, it was Belgium, but a follow-up revealed Belgium had decided on the F-35 as early as 2015. It was a staged competition, including other competitors like the Rafale. It was just to try to lower the price of the F-35, but in reality the choice had already been made. In 2020, it's Poland we're talking about, a country that is so submissive to the United States. They make a direct purchase from the suppliers are chosen without tenders or competition, so prices aren't even negotiated. They just proceed directly. In the bid, in 2021, there's Switzerland with sovereignty criteria that are very important. Pretty much everyone was convinced that the Rafale was going to win. I should mention, at the time I was working at Cosmos. We had received confirmation from the French industry that the Rafale had won the competition in Switzerland. And strangely enough, after Joe Biden's visit there, the announcement of the results was delayed by a few weeks, and suddenly the F-35 ended up winning the competition. For a plane, let me remind you, that was mainly supposed to be focused on protecting Swiss airspace. They end up with a plane meant for low altitude penetration in our airspace. Highly debated. If the Swiss ever want to bomb Lion, they could. So nobody believes that the plane is suitable, but especially that it's the cheapest, because that's what they claim. The F-35 was the cheapest, even compared to the F-18, and we know the sale prices for both when sold to the Americans. Saying the F-35 is cheaper than the Rafale is one thing, but cheaper than the F-18? We know that was a lie. Then the Emirates as well, who made this choice in 2021, except that they found out through the Israelis who were worried about having this plane in their hands. He finds out that the Americans can reduce the stealth capabilities of the aircraft, and so that leads the Emirates to cancel. They're the only ones who got sick in this area. They cancelled their contract to buy the F-35 to turn to the Rafale in the F-4 standard, which they are obviously very happy with today. And then we have Finland, the same year, which will, in principle, conduct a proper technical analysis with a strong focus on offensive electronic warfare. And on this point, it has to be said, it's probably the most capable aircraft in the competition. But on the other hand, the Finns continue to believe the announcements from the Americans and Lockheed Martin regarding the operating costs of the aircraft, which in reality will make it unaffordable for the Finnish state, for the Finnish military. In 2022, there's Germany for its American atomic bombs as part of NATO. They were supposed to renew their fleet and they wanted to buy a F-18S. When Americans saw the Germans would pick the F-18 to carry their atomic bombs, what did they do? They removed the F-18S, which could carry the B-61 atomic bomb. By monopolizing, the Germans had no choice and were forced to buy the F-35 even though they didn't want to. There too, then there's Canada. Canada is a real joke. Choice in 2022, but the F-35 was already selected without competition in 2010. Except there were extra costs that had been discovered and that had been hidden by the government to get the plane accepted. So, a new competition was launched in 2015. The Liberal government at the time said the 35 weren't allowed to compete, since the plane doesn't meet Canada's needs and in any case, it's more expensive. However, Washington pressured for the plane's return to the competition, and also to set evaluation criteria that are so biased that all the international competitors, all the F-35 competitors end up withdrawing. The Rafale Eurofighter and just the Gripen remain against the F-35, which will clearly win. In 2023, it's also the Czech Republic. No evaluation due to an extremely limited budget. So they buy just 24 planes, which isn't nearly enough to defend their territory, to support maintenance, training, air defense, missions and deployments, essentially everything. It's so expensive they don't buy enough, but it still goes through smoothly. A government decision made without competition in 2024, it's Greece. A special case. Theoretically, they are facing the S-400 air defense system, which is operated by Turkey, so it's of Russian origin. Initially, they planned to buy the F-35 for this. They realized with Ukraine that the F-35 isn't needed to destroy enemy air defenses. But nevertheless, they will buy about 20 F-35S to complement the Rafale fleet, even though, once again, the Rafale, in principle, according to their own internal assessments, would have been sufficient. They bought both planes as planned, staying committed. Still, it's a strong move by the politicians. And we also have, in 2024, Romania buying the plane, or Romania. We can already see the difficulty that countries, let's say rich ones like Norway, Switzerland, are having. Romania is also buying the F-35. It's another political decision made without evaluation, competition or cost pressure. To deal with the aftermath of the war in Ukraine, they wanted to move quickly, very quickly, so they gave themselves a chance to step back and gain perspective. So they bought this plane, which, as we'll see, will cause many problems. So, do you usually see the F-35? It became established in many countries, even though it wasn't the preferred plane for the military, the technicians, or those who wanted to use it. But it was imposed many times by local governments. So sometimes it's simply because these countries are so submissive, whether it's Japan, Israel, Poland, or due to diplomatic pressure, like with Norway. Sometimes it's the government forcing things through, like in Belgium, the Netherlands, Greece, Australia, and likely Switzerland. And sometimes it's simply because the plane has a monopoly on short takeoff and vertical landing, as in Great Britain, Italy, or Japan. However, in all these countries, we now have experience-based feedback. We can say it directly to those still buying the F-35. The budgets are not being kept, the budgets are exploding. Now, I'll share a few numbers I find most telling, though there are certainly others. First, Norway faces an extra €16.5 billion cost to operate the aircraft, per the executive's official report. In Great Britain, the cost has increased, attention, hold on, from 18 to 71 billion pounds sterling, according to the National Audit Office. In Australia, costs rose from $30 to $43 billion for a functional plane, 25% less than planned, and so it can't fulfill its operational contract. In Japan, the first planes had a 50% cost overrun. In the Netherlands, cost overruns caused Parliament to cancel the purchase. In 2010, the government imposed its choice, again in 2013. The Court of Auditors reported a 70% rise in the plane's cost, leading to a smaller fleet. And instead of having the 85 aircraft that were initially desired, the fleet became so small to fit within the budget that they could no longer even meet their commitments within NATO in terms of the air fleet. So, what did they do? They had to invest more money. So, they have 52 planes that will cost them more than the 85 planes that were initially planned. That's for countries already using the F-35 and still facing surprises. Some countries without the F-35 are already facing unpleasant surprises. For instance, the Swiss thought they were signing a fixed-price contract. How could anyone, even for a second, believe that the government had accepted that proposal? A fixed-price contract for a plane whose equipment hasn't even been defined yet, the final F-35. The equipment is unknown, evaluation isn't complete, the radar isn't validated, and they don't know what it will be. Also, the cooling system is missing many parts, so making the public believe that it was going to be a fixed-price contract. Your government fooled you, Swiss people. I recommend Bruno's analysis from Bruno Aviation. I also refer you to his channel, which I'll put in the comments. In this video, he reviews all technical reports on the American F-35 and videos focused on Switzerland. If you're interested, you'll love it. And now you have Switzerland, which is being required by the United States to pay an overcharge of 1.2 billion francs. Just that. The excuses are bogus. Anyway, nobody believed them. The problem is that, as a result, it goes beyond the budget envelope, so as soon as it exceeds 10% of the initial budget envelope, a new vote could happen this fall, but like Switzerland, the government wants to impose this plane, so there won't be a vote. Despite the referendum that was supposed to happen but was blocked by the government, they're now questioning things. To reduce the fleet of F-35, which is already very small, for a plane that doesn't fly as much as they would like. Just to stay within the planned budget, it's just absurd. You also have Canada, which still hasn't received these planes. And be careful, we went from 29.3 billion Canadian dollars planned to 73.9, from 23 to 73.9. But everything's fine. Buying the F-35, it's working well, there's no problem, and the Canadians haven't seen the first plane yet. And I'll skip over the little details, like Belgium and Germany, which have additional infrastructure compared to what was originally planned. This will cost Belgium 300 million euros and Germany 645 million euros respectively, just for infrastructure, just to make them suitable to integrate and accept the F-35. It's just absurd. All of that adds extra costs. Even before operating the plane, we need to consider how much it will cost. Let me remind you what the United States said. We're discussing not just clients, but the entire F-35 program itself. It was at $1 trillion originally. To buy 2,860 planes, it went up to more than 2 trillion to buy. We have only 2,456 planes, so we're paying double the price for 400 fewer planes. And what does the Court of Auditors say? It states that since the plane costs $42,000 per flight hour and will never achieve the promised operating cost, it will never be sustainable for the United States. So, when you have the United States, Norway, Switzerland, rich countries, the Netherlands, Who told you the F-35 is too expensive for us? On the other hand, there's Romania, Finland, the Czech Republic, and rumors in Morocco. How do these countries think the plane will be sustainable for their air force? How can we believe that the military officials of these countries made this choice? But the best part is still the Germans, since the secret German contract leaked. It was analyzed by the newspaper Stern, and there are still 4 fundamental points that were discovered. I'll read them to you. The American government may suspend or cancel aircraft-related services in whole or in part. Basically, they stop flying. Germany must pre-declare each mission to the United States before execution. The aircraft usage data, that is telemetry, emission configuration, sensor configuration, everything must be uploaded to an American cloud, Amazon Web Services, accessible to American authorities. The Germans aren't allowed to inspect the aircraft's embedded computer code, nor its software, not even to find the spyware that the Americans have placed inside and for which they have already made significant investments, to prevent information from being sent back without the user's consent. It's absurd. We're discussing a contract with Germany. If you believe Belgium, the Netherlands or Canada treat you better than Germany, you're mistaken. Only the Emirates understood. It's not sovereign, so it's not a plane for me. Do you think the military in your countries who want to defend you, do you think they would have chosen this plane if they knew all the facts? Or did the government twist their arm with absolutely colossal extra costs? So the question is, what do we do now? Now that you've had this anti-defense, anti-sovereignty and anti-economic choice forced on you, there aren't 50 options. It's not too late to cancel. It's not too late to turn back. Look at planes like the Rafale, like the Gripen, Brazil, which bought the Gripen, the Rafale, which was bought by India after an official competition, after eliminating all competitors, with costs controlled at 20,000 euros per flight hour. They are happy with it, they say it, they express it, Egypt is happy with it, they bought more even though it wasn't planned originally. The good feedback means that other countries like Indonesia will choose this aircraft. The Emirates chose this aircraft because the contracts are honored by countries like France or Sweden. These are truly exports that work well. The purchasing countries are satisfied. There is the possibility to do the same thing. There is the possibility to opt out if you can't opt out of the entire fleet. For example, in Canada, if they opt out of the entire program to purchase 88 planes, it will cost them $10 billion. Including, of course, the cost of losing several thousand jobs that are tied to the industry involved in the program. In Switzerland, they claim losing the plane would immediately cost them 700 million francs, but I'm not saying to give up the entire fleet. Canada, which has to buy 88 planes, what if they only take 36, for example, and then buy about 50 planes that are actually suited to Canada's needs? With a long range, which doesn't need to be stealthy when it's doing interception, it will be infinitely cheaper to cancel these contracts today. Yes, lose a few billion now, but save tens of billions over the next 50 years. What if Belgium or Switzerland? Today they're limited to about a dozen planes, which is the same size as the F-35 fleet that will be bought by Singapore. So a small fleet like that is sustainable. And what about the rest? He makes up for it by buying 20 or 30 Gripens. If you want Rafales, I'm happy for the Rafale by buying about 20 other planes. You might lose a few billion up front, but you'll save much more money over decades. Next, a great example is Greece. What did Greece do? They still bought about 20 F-35s, although today many Greek military officials think they could do without them, but they did make the purchase. Just over 20. With the remainder being Rafales. This plane outperforms the F-35 in every way and costs half as much. More than twice as cheap to operate, with controlled costs and guaranteed sovereignty, so there's no question about it. Don't be fooled! When I see that Belgium just announced they're going to order 11 more planes, why are they buying more? The plane flies so poorly and infrequently that they must buy more to meet their contract. It's unacceptable. Don't let a government that doesn't understand the stakes push you around. Military personnel, don't accept this. It's absolutely necessary to be able to stand up, to face them, to push back, to create a media backlash against these governments that want to force choices on them, choices that are being imposed by the United States. And then look at what the United States is doing to us with tariffs on Canada and Europe. We can't keep smiling and getting beaten up like an abused child who keeps idolizing the one who beats him. It's not acceptable. And right now we really have a window of opportunity. It's short. We're talking about 1 year, 2 years at most. But if the choice isn't made right away, it'll be too late and we'll be stuck for years. A plane that's worse and more expensive than planned, with ongoing submission to the United States. And they succeeded. What they want is to destroy the industries of the countries around them so that we are forever dependent on the United States. So make your choice quickly. Now, there is still time to take control for the sovereignty of your countries and industrial sovereignty and for the good of your defense. I've already mentioned the F-35, which is meant to be the backbone of our country's defense. We have quite a scoliosis when it comes to the technical aspect. And once again, I'll refer you to the videos that I'll put in the comments of this video. We've already studied this subject a lot before. All right, thanks to Seb, who also helped me prepare this report. And really, all the links are there to check out everything I talked about today. Hang in there. The next few years are going to be tough in military aviation. See you soon.